Okay, so I was watching this guy and I was feeling like it's time to put out a video. Haven't put out a video in a few days. I have lots of interests. Of course, history is one of my interests. I love music. I play a little keyboard. Music has gotten me through some dark times. Classical music, playing things like Claire de Lune. You'll never, once you get into it, you'll never experience a feeling like that. It's almost like meditation. And another thing lately I've been really getting into since really, I guess when it got really exciting was last March. We had the stock market crash, and I started getting into learning about finance and just learning about economics more. I always loved economics. I'll never forget this paper I wrote in for macroeconomics when I did that class in college 10 or 15 years ago, and my teacher loved my paper. The title of the paper was "The Stimulus at the Time with George W. Bush." That little $250 check he gave out would not jumpstart the economy so much, because I just did a simple calculation. I took the stimulus check, multiplied it by the amount of people getting it, and compared that to the overall GDP. And I said, well, that's not really a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. So I'll never forget that. She really liked my paper. I put a lot of heart and soul into that little, 5-page paper. But finance I've been getting into, and today was, of course, inflation. Inflation CPI number came out. Now, first thing we have to understand about CPI. Now, I'm not. Bear in mind, full disclosure. Most of this information I'm talking about, I get from other sources. I constantly watch podcasts. One of the first ones I really got into was Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff is amazing. He's a bit of a doom and gloomer. Here we have in front of you Real Vision Finance. They used to put a lot more content on their page, and recently, they've just been putting the daily briefing on and not really putting on so much other content. So they're trying to get people to go subscribe over there. Hedgeye, I like. This guy used to be on Hedgeye. There's so many. And my recommendation to people is if they want to get into this and be informed enough to make relatively sound decisions, anything except the mainstream guys, the CNBCs, the Bloombergs. Look, I'll even listen to Yahoo Finance just to get headlines. Although Yahoo Finance was very annoying all throughout last year. They're definitely in the tank for the Democrats. Obviously, if you know the reputation of Yahoo News, they were involved in the RussiaGate scandal. They might be getting investigated by Durham for what it's worth right now. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised because they're the ones that wrote the story that Christopher Steele leaked. He leaked a story to himself, basically. I forget how it went, but it was bullshit. But anyway, so we're talking about inflation today. The month over month was 0.4%. But lo and behold, I noticed, first of all, this guy here, he was wrong, but he was wrong for a good reason. He said that the inflation would have started cooling down more by now. He said that the fourth quarter, October, November, December, was going to be Goldilocks, which was going to be okay inflation and growth. He was wrong about the growth part, not the inflation part, because he said we'll have some inflation over the past couple months. He's been on like every week, but he was wrong about the growth part. And he doesn't want to say why he's wrong. So he goes on here and he says, oh, well, I had to update my models, but my models haven't changed. So that's a little duplicitous. No, his models have changed because the growth forecast that he was expecting didn't come out. Uh, and that's because of the obviously we no one the fucking shit libs don't want to admit to it, but it's because of the vaccine mandates. We had 4 million people last month, quote unquote, they quit or resigned. No, they didn't resign. They were forced to resign. You're not going to convince me that a significant portion of those people weren't forced to resign because of the vaccine mandates. You're not going to be able to convince me of that. Okay? I'm sure if you dug into the numbers enough, you'll find out that it's mostly that there's a significant portion, I would say a million or more, that were forced to resign because that's what they're doing. They're not firing these people. They're kind of forcing them to resign in most cases. Forced to resign because of the vaccine mandate. So that put that severely hampered growth. And everybody knows it. Okay. And I don't care what the boomer shit libs that, watch cable news and read Washington Post think. They're a dying breed of people. They couldn't ride off into the sunset soon enough. Seriously, that's how I feel. You know, they need to just shut up and collect their Social Security checks. Okay, go to Applebee's once a week and have their one drink and shut the fuck up. They are destroying this fucking country. Those brainwashed motherfuckers. Walter Cronkite is dead. Okay? I don't know when they and even, that's where this is the Walter Cronkite generation. Okay? They had a lot to do with the lockdowns, okay? Which we are right now feeling the repercussions of. So, this goes let's segue into that a little bit. So we were at 0.4% this month. Back in July, August, no, it was from May to June, we got up to 0.9% month over month. They were saying, well, base effects makes the year over year look worse. True, that was the case back in March and April. 0.9%. They were lucky because the base effects could have been a lot worse if between May and June. If we had 0.9% month over month in March or April, you would have seen a year over year, according to the CPI, which is very low on the scale of actually accurately measuring inflation. Anybody who follows these things knows that CPI, the only thing that's worse than CPI is PCE. Okay, personal consumer expenditures or whatever. That's the only one worse. Daniel Martina Booth said on Twitter that everybody in the Fed knew back in the day when she was there that PCE is worthless, and it was worthless, and it still is worthless. But CPI obviously underestimates inflation probably by half. So I would say actual inflation is probably closer to 10%. Just to be realistic, some people would say 15%. I would say 10% because of certain tricks they do, like quality substitutions, owner's equivalent rent. They were saying that rent only, like a month ago, they were saying that rent year over year for the month of August only went up 2 or 3%. But every real estate, aggregator out there is saying that in most places, there's average, but the average would be closer to 10 to 15%. Okay, that's 1/3 of the basket. So you do the math. If you substitute 2% in 1/3 of the basket for 10%, you get a much higher number for the overall CPI. So obviously the CPI is bullshit, but we can just add double, okay, more or less, to whatever the CPI is registered as according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Why is that? Why would they do that? One of these tricks that government uses, and they've been using for quite some time, several decades, is this idea that, oh, we have data. We have data, and the data doesn't lie, right? Well, actually, data does lie because you can actually cherry pick data, rearrange data, outright lie about it, which is what they do with CPI. Okay, they're saying one thing is something that it actually isn't. So they're saying rent is only going up 2%. It's actually going up more like 10 to 15%. They're outright lying there. And why is that? Because inflation can be a serious political problem, as we saw in the 70s. We had 2 one-term presidents, And one of the main reasons for that was because at that point, inflation was in full swing and people were getting tired of it. Now, notice the political ramifications didn't come until years after the inflation started. So the inflation starts 71, 72, and then it's only by 75, 76 that we start. I don't know exactly when did, now I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, Ford was until 76 or 77, 76. So he got ousted because of inflation. The Fed back then did exactly what the Fed now is doing. The Fed back then, Arthur Banks, said that in 1971, said, oh, don't worry, it's transitory. And he said, it's because of El Nino. And then in 1972, it was a different excuse. I think it was anchovies, or maybe that was related to the El Nino in 71. And the next year, he said, don't worry, it's going to be done soon because it's just the used cars. And every year, he came up with a new fucking excuse as to why inflation was transitory. So we've gone through, we've seen this movie before. Now, whether this decade is going to be like the 70s, I'm not willing to make that prediction. I would say that at 0.4 month over month, we are at a floor. This would be almost like what they call in technical analysis a support level. I don't think it's going to go lower than 0.4. Maybe it'll creep down to 0.3 at some point. I think it's going to actually go up next month and the month after because of energy costs. We're going to see 0.5, 0.6 maybe. I don't see it going higher than 0.6. But you got to think, if you multiply, let's multiply. So if we had 0.4 every month, just to say we had 0.4%, 0.4 times 12, 4.8%. Okay. What if the average, what's the average? Let's say the average is 0.5 times 12, 6%. So if you have, I would say that's safe to say that the average or the average CPI for this year is going to turn out to be 0.5. I would say probably more like 0.6. Then you're talking 7 to 8% in terms of actual CPI according to their number. Add double to that, you're talking double digit. Okay, maybe over 15% depending on what it is. Okay, that's high inflation. How long that's going to last, I don't know. But I think for now, 0.4% is the support level. And it's only going to go up from here to 0.5 and 0.6. It'll probably gyrate between 0.4 and 0.6 for the next several months. But what this guy could not, back to this guy, so what he couldn't have predicted was the growth story. The growth story, he was predicting inflation and growth, or what he was calling Goldilocks. That's his term. He likes to make up all these terms. He seems like a very nice man. He seems very smart, very handsome. I wish I looked like this guy. Okay, I'm sure he's fucking bitches constantly. All right, good for him. I'm not hating on him. You know, as long as he doesn't have a eunuch dick, he should be pretty good. He's probably got money. He's probably a fucking machine, dude. So, but he didn't take into account the political ramifications. And I don't know. I mean, this is pretty wild. Joe Biden was down in the polls because of Afghanistan, and it's just, oh, let me just go back to COVID, because that's the only issue I think I can get anybody on, and just the level of incompetence and lack of self-awareness of these people in Washington, especially in the White House. It's pretty breathtaking. And they did these vaccine mandates because the focus groups told them to, and it polls well. Vaccine mandates polls well in the base. Just the base. That's all they care about. I'm wondering if they even care about independence. The White House doesn't seem to be doing focus groups for independence. Why is that? Independents are about 30% of the electorate. You're saying you only need 30% of the electorate, the Democrat base, the hard Democrat base. You don't need, obviously, you don't care about the Republicans, but the independents are important. So why wouldn't they care about the independents, I wonder? But, you know, Let's look at Yahoo Finance real quick and see what else went down today. It looked like our the yields obviously and very conspicuously started going back down. Is that so today your treasury yields minus 3% yield on the 30-year, 10-year, minus almost 2%, but your short end's going up a lot. 12%. That's not too unusual. But look at the 5-year, 1%. But it looks like to me, I don't know what to say. Are the bond vigilantes? Did the bond vigilantes take a day off and people are coming in and buying the dip on the bonds, or is the Fed getting involved? I mean, it seems to me that this is going to go. I predict I would say, based on my suspicion that the Fed is involved, they're going to go to just under 200 basis points in the 30-year and just under 150 basis points on the 10-year. But gold's going to go. Gold had a good day. The miners had a good day. I had some trades. I've been doing trades in the miners. The miners are just they're just too good to pass up right now. They're just way too good to pass up. So I don't think you can really lose over the next month. Obviously, someone's uncomfortable with bonds going over 200, 30-year going over 200, 10-year going over 150. So we have that. You know, I wonder if there's going to be any pivot as far as the vaccination situation, the mandate situation. We're having our economy. It's obvious to anybody who's honest with themselves that the economy is being affected by the mandates. Growth is slowing. They don't have to admit it, but I think they're going to have to pivot. Obviously, politicians will never admit they're wrong. Why would they? They don't get rewarded for admitting when they're wrong and being truthful. So why would they ever admit that they're wrong? But they might pivot. We'll see what the final rules of these OSHA regulations are. It's looking like, as far as I can tell from what I'm hearing, that the religious exemption is going to stand up in court. Anybody who has a bona fide religious belief, it doesn't have to be a major religion. It can be any religious belief. The courts cannot come out and the courts cannot rule against a person on a religious exemption if just because it's not a major religion, or just because your religious belief doesn't coincide with what the leaders of that specific organized religion said. So if the Pope says it's okay to get jabbed, but you say, I don't believe that, even though I'm a Catholic, but this is why, blah, blah, blah. You can be really any reason. Doesn't even have to be in the Bible. You can say, I believe the pharmaceutical companies are Satan. And I truly do believe that. But they're just not, I mean, they're part of the whole satanic cult in the world. But that's going to win in court. That's going through the courts right now. The religious exemption is going to stand up. The First Amendment is clear. Government establishment clause. Government cannot be involved in establishing a religion and must guarantee religious freedom. So therefore, the government cannot tell somebody that their particular religious, beliefs do not count as religious beliefs. But, you have COVID dying down right now as we speak. But obviously it wasn't about that, was it? And you're going to see that. They're going to continue to push for the vaccines. But COVID is on the decline. And it wasn't because of an increase. I don't know. I'd have to look at the vaccine numbers. But I don't think the vaccination rate went up all that much. But COVID's on the decline because that's what endemic diseases do. And by the time the next variant comes around, which it will, probably this winter, maybe late this winter, by the time the next variant comes around, okay, the current vaccines won't be effective at all. I mean, this vaccine is barely effective. I don't know. It's like 50% effective. Who knows? I don't pretend to know everything about that, but I can tell you that we have COVID on the decline. They're going to continue to push the vaccine mandates. Why? Because it was all about making money for big papa pharmaceutical companies, for big daddy government is helping their friend the pharmaceutical companies out. Okay, obviously that was it. I'm not sure where people started trusting the pharmaceutical companies. It used to be that good liberals railed against the pharmaceutical companies. It was Pfizer that paid a $2 billion judgment to the DOJ for fraud less than 10 years ago. I don't know. It's just frustrating. But a lot of it is that the people themselves, the people that call themselves Democrats, they're disingenuous. Why are they disingenuous? Because the people that they revere lie constantly. And I think that bleeds over into the average person. And they start thinking, well, if, Jen Psaki lies every day, and if Rachel Maddow lies every day, well, then I think it's okay for me to lie every day. I'm just going to be a dishonest, disingenuous piece of shit because that's what's trendy right now. It must be okay because, all the people that I revere are doing it. Is that what's really going on? A lot of it also has to do with the fact that these people that call themselves liberals are very arrogant. They're always all bragging about their fucking degrees that they have. Okay. But one thing they're not very smart in is history, because they don't value history. But I've used history over the last couple of years to predict everything that is going on. I didn't think that it would be impossible to eradicate the coronavirus because I'm a doctor. No, it's because I know history. I know what a coronavirus is. I understand how they behave, how they mutate. So I got the receipts online a year and a half ago that this was going to be an endemic disease, and give Styx credit. Styx was saying the same thing. Styx Hexenhammer. So back to the economy. So we're here with, I'm thinking that Treasury yields, they're going to try and bring them down under 200 basis points for the 30-year, under 150 for the 10-year. Gold, I'm not sure. Well, I'd be surprised if any time within this month gold gets to 1900. Maybe. That would be awesome. The gold miners, though, are incredibly undervalued. Everybody's been talking about that. Russell 2000, I'm thinking about putting down a bet, putting down something on the Russell 2000 if I could find a good ETF. With crypto, it seems to me that crypto tends to correlate with whatever the tech stocks and the NASDAQ are doing. So we had a decent day in the NASDAQ today, and then looks like we're still having a decent day in crypto. So let me see what crypto's doing at the moment. What my Bitcoin and Ethereum are doing. So 2% on both in the last 24 hours. Cardano seems to be a little bit not correlating so much with the other two, which is interesting. But Cardano seems to be having support levels. Let me see before I say anything. It's at 218, so it doesn't seem to want to go below 210 at any given time. Stellar Lumen's 8%. So it seems to me that tech, as long as tech goes up, which means as long as yields go down, tech goes up, and crypto goes up. I don't see any correlation, or I haven't seen any correlation between crypto and inflation. So anybody that says crypto is a substitute for gold, I don't think so. I'm not convinced. Maybe for some people. I think that the people who buy crypto are the same people who buy tech stocks. These are your Wall Street bets people. they don't know or care about fundamentals. And then it's the rest of the hedge funds pumping and dumping. So Euro US dollars. Looks like the euro gained a little bit on the dollar. What's the DXY today? I heard it's like 94. So we're pretty high on the DXY, which is interesting. That could be more due to other currencies being weak than ours. China, US dollar gained a little bit. So yeah, here we are. You had Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance. What were they saying? I saw earlier they had a little typo. They said on the headline, let me find this. Did they take it off yet? Earlier, I saw a headline from Yahoo News saying that inflation was up 0.3% month over month. Either a typo or they're doing their typical lying in the typical strategy of lying in the headline, and contradicting the headline in the body of the article. I saw that. Kind of gave me a double take. I said, wait a minute, I thought inflation went up 0.4. But I think that, it's the rate of change, the month over month. That's what I'm more concerned about. The year over year, it's there, it's something, but I like to see the month over month and what the month over month calculate what the month over month inflation is, because the month over month shows you the rate of change. So the quickest month, this was the month where inflation went up 0.9 month over month from May until June. Okay, so that's a high rate of change. So we had a pretty steady for the first few months from January all the way up. I think January might have been 0.3 or 0.4, and then it just went up from there. Now it's going down. I think 0.4% might be a floor for now. Obviously, the infrastructure bill looks like Sinema and Manchin are going to take the fall for having to cut that infrastructure bill down to size. It's going to have to be a trillion. It's probably going to end up. Matt Taibbi said, "Oh, I think it's going to end up being 2 trillion." He's probably right. You have to trust what he says. So that's where I'm at with all this. I'm making some moves on the gold miners. I was thinking about hitting up, Citigroup because their earnings were coming out tomorrow. But then I looked at J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan had above average, higher than anticipated earnings, and their stock still went down. So, not sure what that was all about. It had to do with inflation, though. So I ixnayed on the Citigroup call. All I ever do is buy calls and puts. I don't really screw around with selling so much, although a lot of people say selling is a lot better. I have to learn more about it before I start doing that, how to protect myself. Because it seems like if you don't know what you're doing, you could lose a lot of money on the selling of options. And I like to stick to commodities because, I'm much more understanding of politics. I'm learning a lot more about macro now, but I think one of my strengths is I have a really good intuition about politics because of my historical knowledge and how much I value history. I think that Biden might be stuck at around 40 approval. We'll see. He may get a bump if the infrastructure deal goes through. That'll be interesting. But I don't see much more that he's going to push through. I think it looks like the Democrat Party is in disarray. Biden is in disarray. The generic ballot was, what was it? I saw the generic ballot was favoring the Republicans by a considerable margin. That's rare to happen. The polls, if we want to look at it honestly, I'd say he's in the low 40s according to what I'm seeing in the polls. He has nothing else to boost his approval. He's already tried. All he had was COVID. If COVID goes down, he has absolutely nothing. The best thing he could do is completely stay out of the limelight. I see another foreign policy crisis coming up soon. I'm not sure where it's going to be, but when the United States is in this state of weakness, I think someone's going to try and take advantage of that some way, somehow. So we'll see if it's China. It wouldn't surprise me. But some way, somehow, we're going to have a serious crisis with the, we're going to have another serious public foreign policy crisis. And it's going to be messy. I think Biden will make it till the end of the year at least, unless we have a serious problem like with another crisis, or unless he gets really sick. So we'll see what happens. But that's my spiel for today. Just wanted to go over the inflation situation and what I think about that. So to recap, I think 0.4% month over month is going to be your kind of your baseline, your support level. And we might go between 0.6, 0.5, 0.6, back down to 0.4, maybe 0.3 at some point. That's a little negative outlier. This will probably be going on for at least the next 6 to 12 months. I think Biden probably has to pivot on the vaccine mandate issue. Whether he wants to admit that the bad job numbers were due to vaccine or not, he's going to have to pivot. He's going to start coming under a lot of pressure from the Democrats. They don't have to admit that they were wrong, but they're going to have to pivot some way, somehow. Maybe by not fighting the religious exemption so much in court, because they're losing that anyway. So just some thoughts. Have a nice day.